The desert wind moved like a living thing, carrying with it the scent of dry sage and dust. The sun was dipping toward the horizon, painting the world in copper and gold. Along the dirt road leading into a lonely frontier settlement, a worn-out horse pulled an even more worn-out wagon. Seated on the weathered plank seat was Eliza Warren, a young woman of 24 whose gray eyes held the weight of 100 unspoken stories. Her dress was plain and patched, her bonnet pulled low to shield her face. She had been traveling for weeks from Missouri, crossing endless plains, narrow canyons, and the occasional stretch of forest that clung stubbornly to life. She came alone, and in those days, a woman traveling alone was as rare as rain in summer. The reason for her journey was hers alone to know. The town she approached was nothing more than a single street lined with rough wooden buildings. A general store, a blacksmith's shop, a saloon, a church, and a small boarding house where she planned to stay. Just beyond the town limits lay the land of a nearby Apache community. The peace between the settlers and the Apaches was fragile but had held for several years. Among the Apaches was a man named Nakai. He was tall, with copper skin and long, straight black hair that fell in neat braids, decorated with carved beads and a single white feather. His eyes were calm, his demeanor steady, the kind of presence that spoke of someone rooted deep in his own spirit. Nakai was not known as a fighter but as a keeper of stories and a man who performed ceremonies for his people. Eliza first saw him the moment she arrived. He was standing outside the general store, exchanging tanned hides for tools. He glanced up as her wagon passed. Their eyes met briefly. There was no judgment in his gaze, no lingering curiosity. Only a quiet acknowledgement, as if he recognized that she carried a weight invisible to others. She quickly looked away and continued on to the boarding house. That night, the settlement was silent except for the faint howl of a coyote far in the hills. Sleep would not come to Eliza, so she stepped out onto the porch, arms wrapped around herself against the cool air. The stars overhead shone so clear and sharp they seemed close enough to touch. She heard soft footsteps. Turning, she saw Nakai approaching, a wooden cup in his hands. "Herbal tea," he said in slow, deliberate English, each word carrying a quiet gravity. "For the cold." Eliza accepted it with a small nod. Nakai sat on the steps, not too close, and looked up at the sky. He did not press her with questions or attempt idle conversation. The silence between them felt strangely companionable. Days passed. Eliza began working at the boarding house, serving meals and cleaning rooms. Men in town sometimes stared at her. Not in admiration, but in that assessing way that made her want to shrink into herself. She knew she was not conventionally beautiful. Her skin was browned and roughened by sun, her hair unkempt from weeks on the road, and her features carried a hardness earned from surviving more than she cared to remember. One afternoon, carrying a metal pail to the creek just outside town, she found Nakai sitting beneath the shade of a mesquite tree, repairing a woven basket. She hesitated, then spoke. "You always seem to have something to do with your hands," she said. "The hands learn what the heart never forgets," Nakai replied without looking up. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, almost without thinking, she reached up and removed her bonnet. Her tangled, dusty hair fell to her shoulders. She kept her gaze low. "I'm not pretty," she said quietly, as though confessing something long kept hidden. Nakai set aside the basket and stood. He took a small, carved wooden comb from a pouch at his belt and stepped toward her. Without a word, he began to gently work through her hair, untangling each knot with slow, careful strokes, as if the task required the utmost respect. Then, he began to braid it. "In my people," he said softly, "braiding hair is done in ceremony. It is for beginnings, for healing, or for farewells. It is so the spirit does not scatter in the wind." Eliza closed her eyes. No one had touched her hair since she was a child. With each braid, she felt some invisible part of her being pulled back together. When he finished, Nakai stepped back. Now, he said, the wind will know you.